Well, Japan have waited a long time for the 2026 World Cup to kick off because behind the hosts, they were the first team in the world to qualify. They've built themselves into an Asian heavyweight over the past 25 years. But despite qualifying for 8 straight World Cups, they haven't broken their round of 16 curse. Could 2026 in North America give them the bump they need to finally make it to the quarterfinals? Welcome to Kickback Soccer Media's World Cup Capsules, where you'll learn everything you need to know about all 48 of the national teams competing at the 2026 World Cup. From the history of the game, the nation's current World Cup trajectory, unsung heroes, and cultural moments. I'm David Goss, and today we're talking about the Samurai Blue of Nippon. No team in world football has built as intentionally, as methodically, or as successfully in the past few decades as Japan. Kickstarted by the 2002 World Cup, Japan's developed a successful youth structure, and they produced current stars like captain and Liverpool midfielder Wataru Endo, Monaco midfielder Takumi Minamino, and Brighton's Kaori Mitoma. And maybe most impressively, they've qualified for the past 8 World Cups in a row. Countries like Belgium, Uruguay, and the Netherlands cannot even say that. And when you look at it, it all started in 1872. The game was introduced to Japanese Imperial Navy cadets by Quebec-born British Admiral Archibald Lucius Douglas. The first match in 1888 between two athletic clubs, Yokohama Country Athletic Club, which is the oldest running soccer team still playing. In the 1920s, the game spread and was organized regionally, mainly in high schools and colleges. In the 1936 Olympics, Japan won the first game 3-2 over Sweden and then lost to gold medalist Italy in the second round. Then it would go quiet at the international level. Japan, of course, would rejoin FIFA in 1950 and make its international return in 1951 after World War II. But the sport wasn't major. The national team wasn't competitive. There was no professional league inside of Japan. They didn't even play in the Asian Cup until 1988. In 1968 in Mexico City, they won a bronze medal in the Olympics. This spurred the formation of the biggest amateur league in the country. Most clubs were corporation teams where the players worked for the company or the athletic clubs. It was similar to Europe and the US and Canada in the early 1900s, late 1800s, before the game was fully professionalized. The few players who did get paid, they were employees of the companies, and most of them were from Brazil. In 1977, Yasuko Okidera made his debut for Cologne. He was the first Japanese player in Europe's professional leagues. In 1981 to 1988, a special Japanese-only phenomenon occurred to the sport of soccer. An anime cartoon called Captain Tsubasa took over. Over 80 million copies were in circulation at its peak. It is credited heavily with the growth of the game in Japan, and there are international superstars like Alessandro Del Piero, Zidane, Iniesta, Torres, who say it influenced their desire to have the careers that they went on to have. In the middle of that, Japan had its best appearance in World Cup qualifying. They finished 2 goals short of qualifying for the 1986 World Cup, falling to their rivals, South Korea. Off the back of that, they hosted and won the 1992 Asian Cup. They also won Asian Cup titles in 2000, 2004, and 2011. But the big moment is 1993. The J.League was created as a fully professional soccer league across Japan. This was a huge dump in the game. Many of the previous corporation teams were remade to fit more of their larger community. So they changed their names, they changed the structure of how the rosters were built to appeal to their cities more than just their corporations. It has an open pyramid, so any team can join and eventually work their way up to the top division. After that, Japan finally qualified in 1998 for the World Cup, and they have not missed qualification since. But it's been 6 World Cups of bouncing back and forth between group stage exits and round of 16 exits. The peak, the 2002 World Cup, which we'll get into a little bit more in just a moment. When you think of Japan's World Cup moments without hosting, you think of the most recent World Cup. Comeback victories over Germany and Spain, both 2-1. They were the first Asian team to top a group not at a home World Cup, and they were first to make it out of the group in back-to-back World Cups. They've had tough moments. The tight loss at home to Turkey in 2002. They've lost in penalty kicks in the round of 16 twice, in 2010 to Paraguay and then in 2022 to Croatia. Maybe the most painful of them all was 2018. They got out of the group. They were up 2-0 on Belgium's golden generation, and they blew the lead to lose 3-2 right at the end of regulation on a counterattack against their own corner kick. For 2026, the road to World Cup qualification was dominant and impressive. Japan was the first team to book their ticket behind the hosts, wrapping up their group with 3 games to spare. They went perfect in the second round of qualifying, which they had to buy into, going 6-0-0 with 24 goals scored and 0 goals conceded versus North Korea, Syria, and Myanmar. In the third round, they continued to roll with 3 wins straight out the gate over China, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. They put up a combined 14-0 goal differential in those games to quickly take control of the group. They ended up drawing Australia at home in the next game. Then they went on another 3-game winning streak. A 2-0 win over Bahrain in March of 2025 sealed the deal. Feyenoord striker Asai Ueda was one of the stars of qualifying. He had 8 goals, and it's believed a lot of the offense will once again run through him. The man behind that run is manager Hajime Moriyasu, who was appointed coach in 2018. He led them to the round of 16 in that World Cup, as well as the next one, and has remained coach. He's known for his good man management, developing a lot of the young players who have pushed into the team while keeping the prime generations connected to the squad and churning forward. He likes to set his team up in a 3-4-2-1 formation, and he led all of qualifying with 54 goals from 17 different goal scorers. Japan likes to play a possession-based, quick passing style that fits so perfectly in the technique they have trained from a young age. The foreign-based talent pool is so strong and rich right now for Japan, mainly playing in Europe, that Moriyasu has openly floated the idea of basing himself in Europe rather than in Japan in the run-up to the World Cup in order to be able to better monitor and assess the squad. When you talk about the prime moments for Japan on the men's side, because for the women, you've got to talk about the 2011 World Cup when the Japanese national team led by the legend Homare Sawa won the Women's World Cup in the aftermath of a devastating tsunami. But on the men's side, it doesn't get much more important or influential than the 2002 World Cup. Japan was chosen as host alongside South Korea. It was at the time the first co-hosted World Cup, which now feels like the only way you could possibly host a World Cup. Japan and South Korea were competing to be hosts and are, of course, massive political rivals. Japan formerly colonizing South Korea still in the process of trying to gain justice for some of the war crimes that occurred in that occupation. They were told by FIFA that they would be co-hosts or neither of them would get it. So Japan and South Korea came together. They split the groups between the two countries, with Yokohama hosting the World Cup final. Japan ended up in Group H with Belgium, Russia, and Tunisia. They drew Belgium 2-2 in the opener. They beat Russia 1-0 in the second game, and then triumphantly they beat Tunisia 2-0 to close the group on top. They ended up losing 1-0 to Turkey in the round of 16, which is tied now, still, for their furthest performance to date. Some of the international shine of that Japan performance was eclipsed by South Korea, their co-host, who went on to the semifinal themselves, becoming the first non-UEFA or CONMEBOL team to make it to that point. But the legacy of hosting that tournament is huge. It changed everything for Japan on top of the J.League, set them out on the path to become the Asian powerhouse that they now are. They had never qualified for the World Cup, and their league was 3 years old when they were granted the World Cup. Now soccer is a major sport, and they're a major part of the global soccer scene across the board. Soccer hasn't surpassed baseball, but it still goes toe-to-toe for involvement. 3 stadiums from the World Cup are used weekly for the J.League. The average J.League attendance in 2000, right before the World Cup kicked off, was 11,000 per game. In 2019, right before COVID, it was 20,750 per game. It shows the increase of the fan culture as well as of the game. One of the reasons Japan is such a powerhouse is because of its youth structure. It worked really hard to build it up since 1991. Japan has built it into their school system. They've trained PE teachers as coaches, and they're seeing the fruits of that labor now. There are a number of young Japanese players who are already starring for some big clubs, as well as for the national team. Zion Suzuki is a 23-year-old goalkeeper currently at Parma in Italy. Already has 21 caps and is Japan's full-time starting goalkeeper. He was originally born in Arkansas to a Ghanaian parent and a Japanese parent, but grew up in Japan in the Owara Reds Academy. He could be backstopping right behind Kota Takai, a 21-year-old center back signed by Tottenham as Thomas Frank's first signing as the new manager. He has 4 caps already for Japan and was a starter at the 2024 Olympics. Takai made his pro debut for Kawasaki Frontale at 17 years old. He was J.League Young Player of the Year in 2024. He's already won 1 cup, 1 league, and played in an Asian Champions League final. He played every minute of the semifinal where he was faced up one-on-one against Ronaldo and Duran. The 6'4" athletic center back who's comfortable on the ball held his own and has continued to star going forward. There are too many Japanese players who have taken on legendary status for one reason or another. There's, of course, the more modern but still nostalgia-inducing stars like Keisuke Honda and Shinji Kagawa, who shined in Europe in the mid-2010s and led their national team. But then there's the previously mentioned Yasuko Okudera, who made his debut in Cologne as the first Japanese player in a European Pro League. He was the first Asian player to score in a European Cup. First Japanese player to be paid to play in Japan, because at the time, as the league was amateur, it was mainly Brazilians that would get paid to play for corporation teams. He was president of Furukawa when the J.League debuted in 1993. He then joined his former Cologne teammate to create Yokohama FC, originally in the lower divisions, and eventually they got promoted in 2006 to the J.League 8 years later. He was named as president of Plymouth Argyle in England, one of the first former Asian players to take over a European club, and he's the only Japanese male player in the Asian Football Hall of Fame, because of course Sawa is as well. The other big legend to talk about, still doing his thing in the lower divisions, King Kazu, Kazuyoshi Miura, Japan international with 89 appearances and 55 goals. He was the first Japanese player to win Asian Player of the Year in 1992. He played in Brazil as a teenager before returning to Japan. He's the first Japanese player in Serie A. He is still playing. He has shattered records over the last decade for oldest player, oldest goal scorer, everything else, as he's currently 58 years old in his 40th career pro season. That is, right now, the second longest professional career in world history, and he is the oldest player to score in an official match. Even though when you think of ultras or supporters culture, Japan might not be the first country to pop to mind, they actually have some of the most exciting and interesting supporters in the world. At the domestic level, the J.League is known for some insane tifos, flags, packed supporters, organized chants, and much, much more. We saw that at the Club World Cup across the West Coast when Owara Red Diamonds were the lone Japanese team to make it into the competition. On the national team side, Japanese fans are known to travel extremely well and to leave their sections and at times the entire stadium sparkling clean, an act of sportsmanship that catches headlines at every tournament, men's and women's. So expect to see that once again in North America. As always, we like to leave you with a fun fact and a prediction for the team's upcoming tournament. For Japan, there are a lot of fun facts. It's one of the most interesting cultures, unique places on the planet. But the one that kind of connects to soccer that I think is really, really cool that I didn't know until I went to Brazil is that Brazil and Japan are two of the most closely aligned countries in the world. There are over 2 million descendants of Japanese background currently living in Brazil, the largest of any country in the world, and there are over 200,000 expats of Brazil in Japan, which is fourth largest for a Brazilian population outside of the country. It is why, as I mentioned with King Kazu, who grew up playing in a Brazilian academy, made his pro debut in Brazil, that the connection of the sport is so tight between Japan and Brazil. When the J.League launched, the initial players were all Brazilian legends or coaches like Zico, like some of the big names in Brazilian history. And as I said, the factory teams and corporation teams that played when the league was amateur still were mainly Brazilian. Japan has always looked to Brazil because of their connection through their own population and the connection over 150 years of open trade to Brazil as its shining light in the game. And you've seen, of course, the inverse. A lot of Japanese culture affecting things in Brazil, including Captain Tsubasa being one of the most popular anime cartoons in all of Brazil. On the soccer field, you have to think this is the time for the quarterfinals. Now, of course, with the new World Cup being 48 teams, it means Japan would have to win 2 knockout games to get to a quarterfinals. But you have to feel like they are right there. They have been an inch away multiple times, 8 straight World Cup qualifications. And again, feels like the next generation coming through and the current stars are ready to take things to the next step. And North American World Cup in 2026 could be a massive moment for the Samurai Blues. Well, thank you for listening. Don't forget, we are doing one of these for every single country qualified for the 2026 World Cup. So follow Kickback Soccer Media anywhere on social media, and you can find our podcast anywhere you get your shows.